Hi, this is Sam Hunter at Hunter's Design Studio, and I got a little video for you. These are some of my top studio hacks. So let me show them to you. First of all, on the machine, if at all possible, if you have machine furniture or an extension table like this one, use it. The more straight surface you have coming into the needle, the more opportunities you have to align your fabric, and everything gets a lot more accurate. Now, if you're paper piecing or doing your own free motion quilting, here's another hack for you. This is called a Supreme slider. Just pop it on over here. And for free motion machine quilting, when you've got your feed dogs down, it covers the feed dogs right in here. And if you're paper piecing, sometimes when you're paper piecing, this transition and this transition will fold your fabric underneath. What we do with the Supreme slider then is we align it right in front of the feed dog so we have a longer, slippier surface that goes right into here. Now, I know you're looking at this and going, Sam, that slider isn't sticking. It's kind of old and it's kind of dirty and it needs a quick wash. When they get dusty on the back, all you need to do is put some soapy water on them and it revitalizes the stickum. Okay, next up. Now, this is the foot pedal for this machine, and I have it up here so that you don't hear me groaning while I bend over to pick it up. But I have a bar of the hooky side of Velcro on the bottom of my foot so that if I'm sewing on carpet, it grips the carpet and it doesn't slide around. And then you're going to say, well, what do you do if I have hardwood floors? I have a little piece of the rubber mat that you put underneath a rug, and it does the same thing. Next up, knee lift. On all of these larger machines, the ones that have the wider throat or harp space, this is called a harp space, what ends up happening is you're going to dislocate your knee trying to get your knee lift all the way out here. So one of the things that you can do to actually bring it a little bit closer is to pop a piece of pool noodle on it. And what it does is it gives you another couple inches right here so that it's actually more close to the knee when you're sitting, and you can use the knee lift much more easily. Also, it's squishy, so it feels better. Next tip, wind a lot of bobbins at once. Don't be winding them one at a time for your piecing threads. I use 2 or 3 different grays in my piecing threads, a light, a medium, a dark. I also use black, white, and beige, and I have boxes of bobbins for each of them. This will save you a ton of time, so keep these around. And we'll link to this guy in the Amazon store for you. Next up, this particular machine has its own thread stand built into it, but your machine might not. So what do you do for a thread stand if you don't really want to go buy one of those? Enter kitchen tools. Kitchen tools are always great. So a ball jar or a coffee mug. Now what's important here is if you can see the size of this cone, it's smaller than the size of the vessel that it's sitting in. Same in here. It'll rattle around a little bit. The reason for that is if it fits really tightly, when you're starting to unwind the thread at the bottom, that's going to jam and get stuck on you. So, got a nice cute little coffee cup, and you need a safety pin. You put the safety pin with the pin side down and the side up. What do we call that? I don't know. And you tape it onto the side of your machine, and you tape it somewhere where this leads into the thread path that's going to go on in your machine. Okay? And then the first thing we do is we thread up. On this machine, it might have been better for me to put it behind the handle, but for the sake of this, we're just going to leave it in front and go here. My next spot is here, and off we go threading the machine. So all you're doing is lifting this out and creating one extra step in your thread path. And then you don't need to go buy an expensive thread stand. Just use a jar or a coffee cup. Now, one of my friends had her coffee next to this. And she now has a spool of thread that is a little bit coffee colored. So watch out for that. One of the things I keep really close to the machine is just this little, you can see, very, very vintage Tupperware I think this was in their salsa kit at one point. And it has all of the tools that I use in the immediate vicinity of the sewing machine. So little snips, and of course the seam ripper. Can't go anywhere without that. A glue stick. This is a stiletto. There's two kinds of stilettos out there. Stilettos that are completely smooth at the end, and stilettos that actually are a little roughed up at the end and they act a bit like sandpaper. The sandpapery ones, you want to use those to be able to turn fabric in, like if you were appliquing and you needed to do a little needle turn, you want that rougher texture in order to do that. I tend to use this to hold things down as they go underneath the needle. Obviously pens, more snips. These are kind of fun snips. They have a slight bend on them, which means if you're cutting close to the fabric, you're not at risk of putting the points through whatever it is that you're trimming. This is another kind of seam ripper. It's the scalpel blade. Some jobs really need this, specifically Minky and Cuddle, actually. This is where you want to use this. But I use that one very carefully because I can be klutzy, and I don't like visiting the ER for stitches. The last couple of things that I've got in here are two different kinds of tweezers. One of them, the inside edge is completely smooth. The other one, the inside edge, has some texture. And so depending on what you need to hold or pull out, we can use those textures. Okay, I keep a few different kinds of rotary cutters for different purposes. I am a huge foundation paper piecer, so I always have a secondary rotary cutter specifically for cutting through paper and fabric together, which happens when you're trimming FPP blocks. One of the things that I do with most of my tools is I put a ribbon in the end of them. And the ribbon is not only a way to identify that it's mine when I'm hanging out with my friends, but it's also a way to designate to anybody else what it can be allowed to be used for. So in my studio, purple equals paper, always. So this is a paper rotary cutter, and the orange ones are good blades. These are the no-touch ones. I used to only use the very large rotary cutter for cutting large things like backings and battings, but now this is my primary weapon of choice. But I still keep the little one around in case a friend would prefer to use it. And these two small ones, really small ones here, I use specifically for cutting curved templates. So you might need a selection of rotary cutters. You can probably get away with one or two. You might not need all 4 or 5 of these, but these are my preference. So this is one style of needle threader. I think this one was made by Bowen Company, but the one that you're going to find out there mostly is made by Clover, and it doesn't have 2 ends on it. It just has the one. So the needle goes into the hole, eye down, okay? And if you can, when you're putting it in there, line up the eye so it faces this direction. And then we just pop the thread across here. Make sure it's stuck down pretty well. And then you push this, and it pushes the thread through the eye. And then you pull it up, and it's threaded.